Our world is going through a period of new economic dynamics every day. We find new trade corridors as the global trade is reformed with the digital transformation. Turkey continues to claim to be the most competent country to execute diplomacy of economy and trade in this process of change. The International Cooperation Platform, ICP, which was established in 2009 based on this idea, carries out many works in fields such as economy, politics, science, technology and culture in order to contribute to the formation of strategic cooperation to use the opportunities offered by the global economy. The platform, which was established by experts having invaluable experiences in the fields of economy, politics and diplomacy, carries out professional works that shape the global agenda by bringing together all decision makers in the politics, business world, civil society and social arena. The International Cooperation Platform defines its operating principles under 8 main titles, leading the region in the solution through political dialogue and diplomacy, creating mutual economic cooperation opportunities for stability and security, and making joint investments, expanding freedoms, taking human-based law as a basis and validating universal legal principles, ensuring stability and trust, ensuring free movement of trade, products, capital and people, removing the barriers and borders between the countries of the region, increasing the participation of women entrepreneurs in the business world. In addition to its successful professional activities carried out in line with these principles, the International Cooperation Platform brings together respected politicians, investors and entrepreneurs from the region and the world at the Bosphorus Summit, which it organizes every year.
This year, the Bosphorus Summit will be held with the theme of the Great Transformation, driving forces of global change. Statesmen, young leaders and business people of the geography in which Turkey is located share their views on a wide range of topics. From mega projects that facilitate human life in technology and science to international trade conditions, from banking to export to customs practices. At this summit, projects that will shape the future of the world under the topics such as sustainable development models, energy and environmental investments, cooperation in the defense industry, and alternative investments opportunities are roles to be evaluated at the Bosphorus Summit.
Boğaziçi Zirvesi'nin başarılı geçmesini, ülkelerimiz ve tüm insanlık için hayırlara vesile olmasını diliyorum.
We are honored to host higher-level speakers and participants from more than 50 countries. Bosphorus Summit organized by the International Cooperation Platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. As I look across this hall, I can see some bright, shiny eyes, which is good, which tells me that you got some well-deserved rest yesterday. You're going to need it because today's schedule is just as packed, it's just as dense as yesterday. In just a short while, we're going to be looking at various topics, including energy in the next decade. Mithat Rende is going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at NATO and the role that Turkey plays in this military defense alliance, I should say, Western Balkan countries and their European Union candidacy, defense sector, as well as Turkish-Arab dialogue, of course. This is all happening before lunch, so quite a busy schedule. Just like yesterday's schedule, after lunch, we're going to be dividing this hall into two, Hall A and Hall B. So please make sure that you check your schedules. Without further ado, let's actually get started. We have a couple of dignitaries who will be delivering their keynote addresses on the beginning of day 2 here at the Bosphorus Summit. First up is the Secretary General of the OECD, Mathias Cormann. Video message.
Dear Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, the challenges facing us today are profound in their scale, urgency and global nature. Over the past 2 or so years, we have lived through a global health crisis without parallel over the previous 100 years. This health crisis led to an economic crisis, which has been followed by a major geopolitical crisis triggered by Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. These developments have unfolded in the context of pre-existing longer-term structural transformations and challenges, including climate change and wider ecological challenges and the digital transformation of our economies and societies. Individually, any of these crises or structural transformations presents us with major public policy challenges, but they are all overlapping with each other and with each one magnifying the impacts of the other. At the same time, interconnected challenges also present opportunities, of course. Advancing on one challenge can have positive knock-on effects in other areas. Let me give you an example. The digital transformation was, of course, well underway before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, but the pandemic prompted a significant digital leap forward. It changed the way we work, learn, and consume in just a few months on a global scale. A massive increase in teleworking allowed many companies to continue operating despite strict containment measures. And of course, e-commerce absolutely increased significantly. Cross-border sharing of open science facilitated the development of vaccines and treatments to COVID-19, with the strengthening of health information systems through digital technologies also contributing to a better management of the pandemic in many countries. Which provides us with an important lesson. We are capable of rapid change for the better when the world's attention is fully focused on an issue. And it is technology and innovation which can make the necessary changes possible. We must apply this lesson to the context of the great transformational challenges we are facing today. The digital transition will continue to reshape our societies over the coming decades. And while there are risks to manage, it has the potential to help us tackle other key challenges, including the green and energy transitions. The effective deployment of digital technologies can help ensure that the goals of energy security, affordability, and emissions reduction objectives are appropriately aligned. And despite the urgent pressures of high volatile energy prices, governments need to maintain momentum on the net zero transition to build that energy security, affordability, and resilience for the longer term. This will require a system-wide change in the mix of technologies used to generate and store energy and manage energy consumption. Some of these technologies already exist, but their costs need to be reduced so that they can be deployed at scale. Others are still in their infancy and need to be further developed, such as green hydrogen technology. They can accelerate the clean energy transition by integrating higher shares of variable renewables. Dramatic cost reductions of renewable energy, notably wind and solar photovoltaic power generation over the last decade, are underpinning their record levels of expansion. This increased deployment of renewables brings major benefits for energy security. Digital technologies also have a key role to play in support of the green transformation. They are an important enabler of the transition to net zero. They improve the energy efficiency of industrial activities, and they enable green innovation, including to improve active power grids and servers and artificial intelligence. Information from connected sensors like smart meters can help optimize energy consumption and improve the design and monitoring of environmental policies. But there are trade-offs that need to be managed. The rapid growth in digital technologies has a large and growing carbon footprint. In fact, a single transaction of Bitcoin in 2021 consumed the same level of carbon as a seat on a passenger flight from Amsterdam to New York. And in the field of artificial intelligence, deep learning and large language models have increased computing demands dramatically, raising sustainability concerns. The rapid growth in digital technologies also generates electronic waste and poses additional sustainability challenges in the supply of critical minerals. Concerted policy action is needed to maximize the benefits and address the trade-offs of these twin transitions. In closing, this year's Bosphorus Summit provides a great opportunity to reflect on the driving forces of global change. Effectively and efficiently managing the many transformations our economies and societies are facing is a truly global challenge. It requires global leadership and cooperation as well as concerted policy action. I wish you well in your deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mathias. It's no surprise that not only Tabo Al-Ghazali, you actually mentioned a lot of the stuff that he mentioned in his speech, in your opening speech yesterday. Climate change, the fight against the crisis right now, carbonization, moving on to a green energy, very, very all-important stuff. All right, our next keynote speaker served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Egypt for a decade during the 1990s. In the subsequent decade, in this millennia, he served as the Secretary General of the Arab League. I'd now like to invite to the stage Mr. Amr Moussa.
السيدات والسادة، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أود أولاً أن أعبر عن شكري الجزيل للدعوة التي قدمها إلي أخي السيد إرشاد هرمزلو والسيد جنكيز أوزنجيجا. دعوة لأشارك في هذه الدورة الهامة والتي عنوانها التحولات الكبرى التي ستقود قوى التغيير على الصعيد الدولي، وهو عنوان لتطور عظيم الأهمية لمرحلة غير مسبوقة تتسم بازدواجية ملحوظة بين تقدم العالم وتخلفه، بين ثرائه وفقره، بين ذكائه الاصطناعي وغبائه السياسي. آفاق واسعة لكون مزدهر وقوى تشده إلى الوراء قرنا أو قرونا. إنها تحولات كبرى فعلا تشتمل على قفزات هائلة حققتها البشرية وأزمات خطيرة تهدد ليس فقط إنجازاتها بل وجودها ذاته، وهو ما يجعل الحديث في هذه التحولات الكبرى حديثا ذا شجون فعلا. اسمحوا لي أن أقتصر في كلمتي هذه على التحولات السياسية عالمية وإقليمية التي تهدد استقرار هذه المنطقة وأيضا استقرار جوارها. نعم، نحن نعيش مرحلة انتقال فارقة سوف تستدعي جهدا كبيرا من أجل أن حتى لا تنزلق بالعالم إلى ما لا تحمد عقبه. لقد أدت تطورات متتالية ومختلفة إلى طرح مدى صلاحية النظام الدولي القائم بآلياته السياسية والأمنية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية والقانونية والثقافية وربما غيرها، طرح مدى صلاحية هذا النظام للاستمرار ومدى قدرته على إدارة العلاقات الدولية في القرن 21. هذا التساؤل لم يثر بسبب كوفيد-19 ولا بسبب التغيير الملحوظ في الجو والطقس العالمي ولا بسبب الفقر وتزايده أو بسبب مشاعر الحقد والكراهية والتفرقة العنصرية وعدم التسامح الديني وتصاعدها. نعم، لهذه الأسباب جميعا، ولكن يضاف إليها انتشار الفوضى غير الخلاقة وانفلات الأمور على مستوى العالم، وكذلك وبصفة خاصة عجز النظام الدولي عن القيام بوظيفته الأساسية، وهي الحفاظ على السلم والأمن الدوليين، وكذلك انحراف العولمة عن أهدافها في أن ترفع البشرية في مجموعها إلى مستوى مريح من الحياة يفيد الجميع، وكذلك التنافس غير الصحي بين الطرفين الأغنى الأقوى بين الدول والمجتمعات، والذي لا يلقي بالا إلى مصالح باقي الدول والمجتمعات الأقل ثراء أو تلك الأكثر فقرا. الآن وقد قدمت لحديثي بحديث عام عن الموقف الدولي، أود أن أطرح النقاط الآتية. أولاً، أن النظام الدولي المعروف بالنظام متعدد الأطراف لم يفشل كلية في نظري. لقد نجح هذا النظام ولو جزئياً وفقاً لما شاهدناه وعشناه، وقد تابعنا دور منظمة الصحة العالمية وقت الوباء، كما تابعنا في الدول النامية دور منظمة الغذاء العالمي وبرنامج الغذاء العالمي، منظمة الأغذية والزراعة وبرنامج الغذاء العالمي وصندوق الطفولة، وكذلك الدور المهم الذي لا تزال تلعبه منظمات بريتون وودز في المجالات الاقتصادية والمالية على مستوى العالم. ولكن الفشل الكبير جاء في مجال الحفاظ على السلم والأمن الدوليين الذي اختص به مجلس الأمن، وفشل فيه مجلس الأمن بسبب الفيتو وسوء استخدامه وازدواجية المعايير لدى الدول الكبرى صاحبة حق الفيتو، والشك في جدارة تمثيل المجلس ذو 15 عضواً للمجتمع الدولي الذي فاقت وحداته على 200. وعليه فإن الحديث يجب أن يكون في تصوري عن إعادة تأهيل النظام الدولي وتجديده، إعادة التأهيل والتجديد وليس التغيير، ولا أن يستبدل بهذا النظام آخر، ولكن يجب أن تبدأ عملية التغيير، عملية التأهيل بمجلس الأمن وعلاج نواقصه، ويأتي على رأس عملية التأهيل إعادة تعريف التهديدات الخطيرة للسلم والأمن الدوليين. أصبح انتشار الأوبئة كما أصبح تغير المناخ بندين رئيسيين يمثلان تهديدا جديا للبشرية، للسلام، للحياة نفسها، وللاستقرار في هذا الكوكب. غني عن البيان أن إضافة هذين الأمرين إلى التهديدات الخطيرة للسلم والأمن الدوليين، أي إلى أجندة مجلس الأمن، يضيف من دين يمكن أن نفكر في أنهما لا يحملان تعارضا بين الدول الكبرى، لأنه موجه للجميع، ومن ثم هناك فرصة أن نتناقش بكل صراحة مع هذه القوى الكبرى أنه لا يصح أن يكون هناك مجال لاستخدام الفيتو حين ينظر مجلس الأمن في أمور تتعلق بالتغير المناخي أو أمور تتعلق بمواقف وتعبئة ضد الأوبئة. هناك إذن أبواب لمناقشة تطوير جدي إيجابي في النظام متعدد الأطراف. ومن النظام متعدد الأطراف إلى نظام العولمة الذي يشكل مسرحا مهما للتحولات الكبرى التي أشار إليها هذا البند الذي نتحدث في إطاره. لم تأتي العولمة لتكون بديلا عن النظام متعدد الأطراف، ولكنها طرحت بالتأكيد فرصا جديدة من التكامل، من التعاون، أيضا من التنافس، لم تكن في ذهن مؤسسي النظام متعدد الأطراف. وفي هذا فقد تنبهت كما نعلم جميعا الولايات المتحدة التي تحمست للعولمة، بل هي التي طرحتها وتزعمتها، تنبهت إلى أن الصين سوف تصبح أكثر الرابحين منها، من هذه العولمة. جاء الرئيس ترامب ليعلن نظام وسياسة أمريكا أولا، وتبعه الكثيرون حول العالم، وهو ما تعارض طبعا مع أسس العولمة وطروحاتها، مما جعل الرئيس شي رئيس الصين ليعلن في دافوس من عام 2020 أنه إذا كانت الولايات المتحدة تبدو متخلية عن قيادة العولمة، فالصين على استعداد لتولي قيادتها. وهنا بدأ خلاف على مستوى شامل وعميق بين الدولتين العظيمتين بشأن مستقبل العالم وقواعد النظام الدولي. لا أعتقد أنهما في ذلك معنيان كثيرا بمصالح باقي العالم، إلا بما يحقق لهذا الطرف أو ذاك تعبئة واصطفاف في مواجهة الآخر. هذه رسالة إلينا جميعا لنمعن النظر ونبحث الأمر، وهو ما يوحي به عنوان هذا المؤتمر أو تلك الندوة عن تلك التطورات الكبرى أو التحولات الكبرى التي ستقود نحو تغيير، وأفهم أن هذا يعني التغيير الشامل، وأن نعمل نحن الدول الأخرى الخارجة عن هذه مجال الدول العظمى بإصرار وبتعبئة وبحنكة على أن نكون شركاء في إعادة البناء، سواء بالنسبة للنظام متعدد الأطراف أو بالنسبة للعولمة. ثم آتي الآن إلى الأحداث في أوكرانيا والمواجهة الغربية الروسية. مضت 9 أشهر حتى الآن منذ بداية غزو أوكرانيا، ولا يبدو في الأفق نهاية، بل تداعيات تتزايد خطورتها على العالم. تتزايد الخطورة طبعا على أوكرانيا نفسها وإلى سيادتها كما تشير إلى تهديد تشعر به روسيا لأمنها، بالإضافة إلى إشارات تصل إلى حد التهديد باستخدامات معينة لأنواع معينة من السلاح النووي. أنتج كل ذلك أزمة سياسية كبيرة، ومعها أزمة اقتصادية عميقة متشابكة مع أزمة أمن غذائي واسعة. النتيجة الطبيعية طبعاً هي التردي الخطير في إدارة العلاقات الدولية، هذه العلاقات التي شهدت أيضاً تطوراً خطيراً في الناحية العسكرية، فشهدنا إقامة أحلاف سياسية عسكرية جديدة على مستويات دولية وقارية، بالإضافة إلى عودة حلف الأطلنطي إلى المسرح السياسي العسكري الأوروبي، وربما إلى ما وراء ذلك. هل نحن أمام حرب باردة؟ الإجابة عندي هي نعم، بل إننا أمام حربين باردتين متوازيتين على جبهتين مختلفتين، إحداهما تحالف الأطلنطي وروسيا، بين تحالف الأطلنطي وروسيا، والأخرى بين الولايات المتحدة والصين. والحرب الباردة تحمل في أحشائها دوما حروبا ساخنة، مثلما نرى في أوكرانيا ومثلما قد نرى في أماكن أخرى في العالم. ماذا نحن في باقي أنحاء العالم فاعلون؟ الرأي عندي هو أن ندرس اعتماد مواقف مستقلة وسياسات تقودها دول العالم غير الأطراف في هذه الحروب الباردة، لنبتعد عن الاستقطاب والانحياز بقدر الإمكان، وبقدر من المرونة تتيح للحركة المستقلة المقترحة أن تنمو وتصمد. الآن أنتقل إلى المستوى الإقليمي. من هذا المنطلق الدولي، وبالنظر إلى خطورة التطورات الدولية والإقليمية التي تؤثر استراتيجياً على أمن واستقرار وجهود التنمية في المنطقة، وبغض النظر عن خلافاتنا، أصبح الأمر في رأيي يوجب إعادة النظر في العلاقات الإقليمية واتخاذ ما يلزم من خطوات لإعادة صياغتها بعيداً عن المؤثرات الخارجية وتدخلاتها ولو بقدر الإمكان، وأيضاً بعيدة عن ألاعيب المنظمات الفوضوية وقوى الإرهاب المسماة بالنون ستيت أكتورز، بما يسمح بالعمل المشترك في سياق بناء نظام إقليمي يقوم على التعاون والتكامل ويهدف إلى قيام حالة سلام تضمن الأمن والتنمية المشتركة للجميع. وفي هذا أقترح أن نعمل فورياً على التوصل إلى تفاهم إقليمي بأن أي نظام أمن وتعاون في المنطقة يجب أن ينبع منها، أي من المنطقة، ومن مجمل مصالح إقليمية متفق عليها، وليس بتدخل أو تحت وصاية أجنبية تنطلق من مصالح خارجية، وتحتاج إلى مواقف جريئة إزاء مشاكل أساسية يصعب التوصل إلى أي تفاهم سياسي إقليمي دون وضعها على الطريق الصحيح نحو الحل المتفق عليه عالمياً، مثل إقامة الدولة الفلسطينية المستقلة والفاعلة وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية. في هذا الصدد يجب أن نعمل أيضاً على منع الاستيلاء على الأراضي عن طريق القوة ورفض التدخل في الشؤون الداخلية لبعضها البعض والتأثير السلبي في مجتمعاتها، إلى آخر هذه الممارسات التي تثير الكراهية بين الناس وبين المجتمعات والشعوب وتستدعي الرفض وتدفع أحيانا إلى المقاومة وتحميل وتجعل العمل المشترك صعبا إن لم يكن في نهاية الأمر مستحيلا. وفي رأيي آن الأوان لأن يتسع الإطار الجغرافي للمنطقة الشرق الأوسط ليشمل البر والبحر طبقا للقواعد المتفق عليها في إطار التفاهمات المقترحة للتعاون الاقتصادي، ومما يجعل إسهام المنطقة في الحركة الدولية نحو إقامة نظام دولي متطور إسهاما إيجابيا ومحسوسا. ولعل في انعقاد مؤتمر المناخ في شرم الشيخ في مصر وإنجازاته ورسائله إلى القوى الكبرى والغنية باسم قوى العالم النامي وحقوقه ومصالحه مثال واضح لما يمكن للنشاط الإقليمي أن يفعله وما يستطيع. نعم، نحن نستطيع وعلينا أن نمكن أنفسنا من أن نستطيع. النقطة التالية هي حول النظام الإقليمي المتصور وشروطه. أعتقد أن من الأولويات أن نتحدث بصراحة عن الوضع النووي في منطقة الشرق الأوسط، وأن الحل المنطقي الذي يجب أن ندعو إلى اللجوء إليه هو إقامة منطقة خالية من الأسلحة النووية في الشرق الأوسط دون استثناء لأحد أو دون معاملة خاصة لهذه الدولة أو تلك. إقامة منطقة خالية من الأسلحة النووية في الشرق الأوسط والتحول إلى تعاون إقليمي في مجال الاستخدامات السلمية للطاقة النووية. سيكون هذا لصالح الجميع ولصحة التطور والتجمع والتعاون الإقليمي. كذلك أن هذا النظام المتصور والمتوقع يجب أن يكون من ضمن عمده أسسه قيام التزامات متبادلة ومسجلة بالتعهد باحترام سيادة وسلامة أراضي جميع دول المنطقة ووحدتها الوطنية وعدم التدخل في الشؤون الداخلية لبعضها البعض وحل المشاكل القائمة حلا سلميا وطبقا لمبادئ الشرعية الدولية. وأختم بالمحور الثقافي. أود قبل أن أنهي هذه الكلمة أن أشير إلى أهمية البعد الثقافي كأحد عمد النظام المقترح، ودون الدخول في تفصيلات ليس هذا مكانها. أود أن أشير في هذا المقام وتحت نفس العنوان إلى مبادرتين هامتين انطلقتا مؤخرا وبعد طول انتظار، وسوف يكون لهما في تقديري أثر عظيم في خفض التوتر وبناء التفاهم. وأقصد أولا مبادرة المملكة العربية السعودية وجهدها الكبير لتطوير الفكر الديني والممارسات الإنسانية في إطاره. ومن ناحية أخرى أشير إلى ما تحدث به شيخ الجامع الأزهر مؤخرا منذ أيام عن أهمية الحوار السني الشيعي باعتبارهما مدرستين إسلاميتين شقيقتين لا يصح أن يستمر في حالة من الصدام والشقاق أو أن يستخدم في مسارات السياسة السلبية المدمرة. هذا أيها السيدات والسادة قليل من كثير وددت أن أنتهز هذه المناسبة لأعرضه على أحد محافلنا الإقليمية المقدرة، بل دعوني أقول لهذا جئت. أكرر الشكر للدعوة وللضيافة وحرارة الاستقبال وحسن الاستماع. شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Mr. Moussa, if you could actually just stay on stage. Mr. Moussa, just one second. Mr. Rona Yırcalı and Ershad Hürmüzlü, if I could just invite you up onto stage, just a small token of our appreciation here at the Bosphorus Summit. Thank you very much, Mr. Moussa. I'd now like to invite to the stage our third keynote speaker. He is the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Waleed Elkhereiji.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني أن أكون بينكم اليوم وأتقدم بجزيل الشكر للجمهورية التركية وللقائمين على قمة البسفور لعقد القمة 13 تحت شعار التحول الكبير، القوى الدافعة للتغيير العالمي، والتي تؤكد أهمية بذل المجتمع الدولي جهوداً جادة لبلوغ واقع عالمي مستدام وشامل في ظل الأزمات الاقتصادية والسياسية المتتابعة التي يشهدها العالم. إن بلاد المملكة العربية السعودية انطلاقاً من نهجها الراسخ وتمسكها بالشريعة الإسلامية عملاً ومنهجاً حرصت على توفير سبل الراحة والتيسير لقاصدي الحرمين الشريفين وفق أعلى المعايير العالمية، خصوصاً خلال الجائحة التي ألمت بالعالم أجمع. كما اهتمت عبر تاريخها الطويل بالعمل الإنساني والإغاثي على مستوى العالم، مما جعلها تتبوأ المرتبة الثالثة دولياً من حيث حجم المساعدات خلال عام 2021. وقدمت خلال العقدين الماضيين أكثر من 95 مليار دولار لأكثر من 160 دولة حول العالم، تلبية للاحتياج الإنساني دون تمييز. ومنذ إنشاء مركز الملك سلمان للإغاثة والأعمال الإنسانية نفذت مشاريع إنسانية متنوعة في 86 دولة بالشراكة مع المنظمات الأممية والدولية. ولما تحظى به المملكة العربية السعودية من مكانة دولية فريدة وما تتمتع به من ثقل سياسي وإدارة حكيمة تجاه مختلف القضايا، فإنها تسعى بكل السبل لإحلال السلام والأمن والازدهار. الحضور الكرام، إن التحديات التي يواجهها عالمنا حالياً والاختبار الصعب الذي اجتزناه عقب جائحة كورونا المستجد تحتم علينا التضافر الجهود الدولية وتعزيز قدراتنا على مواجهتها معاً، حيث أثرت الأزمات التي تحيط بالمنطقة والعالم على إمدادات التجارة العالمية، وأنتجت تحديات جديدة لم يشهدها الاقتصاد العالمي من قبل، ومنها ما يتعلق بالأمن الغذائي. وهنا لا يفوتني أن أشير إلى أن بلادي تثمن جهود الجمهورية التركية وروسيا الاتحادية وأوكرانيا في استمرار اتفاقية الحبوب الأوكرانية الموقعة بين تلك الدول برعاية معالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة السيد أنطونيو غوتيريش، الأمر الذي سيسهم في تخفيف معاناة العديد من شعوب العالم. الحضور الكرام، من منطلق رؤية المملكة الطموحة 2030 فإنها تقوم بجهود دائمة ومتواصلة لدعم الاقتصاد العالمي واستدامته، إذ حققت على سبيل المثال أعلى نمو على مستوى دول مجموعة ال20 والاقتصادات الكبرى خلال النصف الثالث من العام 2022. كما يتوقع صندوق النقد الدولي بأن ينمو اقتصاد المملكة العربية السعودية لهذا العام بنسبة 7.6% بحد أدنى. وفي مجال الطاقة تتركز جهود المملكة في ضمان استقرار أسواق الطاقة وتوازنها بما يحقق مصالح المنتجين والمستهلكين، ويعزز النمو الاقتصادي العالمي، حيث أنها أهم عناصر توازن الاقتصاد العالمي، مما يسمح لاقتصادات العالم وخصوصاً الدول الفقيرة بالتحرك الفعال نحو تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة والتغلب على التحديات التي تواجه سلاسل الإنتاج وتحديات التضخم. ومن ذلك قرار مجموعة أوبك بلس الأخيرة بخفض إنتاج النفط المبني على أسس اقتصادية بحتة وقراءة دقيقة لمعطيات السوق العالمية. كما ركزت المملكة على نمو الصادرات غير النفطية، مما يشجع على إيجاد بدائل طاقة نظيفة خالية من الانبعاثات الكربونية مثل الهيدروجين الأخضر والهيدروجين الأزرق، اللذين تعتبر المملكة حالياً رائدة في إنتاجهما، وذلك بالتزامن مع مبادرتي صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير محمد بن سلمان يحفظه الله، السعودية الخضراء والشرق الأوسط الأخضر، اللتين ترسمان توجهاً نحو رفع القدرات الاقتصادية مع حماية الأرض والطبيعة من خلال وضع خارطة طريق ذات معالم واضحة تسهم في تحقيق المستهدفات العالمية الخاصة بذلك. ولقد سجلت بلادي حتى الآن إنجازات عديدة في هذا الشأن، حيث تقدمت 13 مركزاً في محور سياسات المناخ، و10 مراكز في مؤشر المستقبل الأخضر لعام 2022، وحلت 10 في المؤشر الفرعي للمباني الخضر، وفي المركز الأول في مؤشر نمو إنتاج الطاقة المتجددة. حضور الكرام، تأتي مشاركة المملكة العربية السعودية في قمة البسفور 13 انطلاقاً من رغبتها في بناء الشراكات والتحالفات الاستراتيجية مع المجتمع الدولي والكيانات والمنظمات الدولية التي تعزز من استقرار الاقتصاد العالمي، وتأكيداً على مكانة المملكة ودورها كقوة مؤثرة وفاعلة في التنمية الاقتصادية، إلى جانب الدور الفاعل للقطاعين الخاص والعام السعوديين في تنفيذ الخطط العالمية الرامية لتحقيق التنمية المستدامة. في الختام، أجدد الشكر للجمهورية التركية على استضافة هذه القمة وعلى ما لقيناه من كرم الضيافة وحفاوة الاستقبال، وأتمنى لهذه القمة النجاح والخروج بنتائج تفضيل المزيد من التعاون وتسخير الجهود والخبرات بغية الوصول إلى استقرار وازدهار للاقتصاد العالمي والنجاح في مواجهة كافة التحديات. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Mr. Vice Minister, just hold on just one second. Cengiz Bey, Erşat, once again, could we present something to you as a small token of our appreciation for your attendance here at the International Cooperation Platform's Bosphorus Summit. Thank you very much. We're going to be moving on straight into our first panel discussion of the day. We're going to be looking at energy in the next decade. We do have a keynote address before Mithat Rende actually takes over the stage for his discussion. I'd now like to invite to the stage His Royal Highness PrinceEl Hassan bin Talal from Jordan to deliver the keynote address for All right. If you just give us a second, I think that we're just waiting on the Prince to come in actually to deliver a keynote address at the beginning of this panel where we look at energy in the next decade. All right. Can we get Mithat Rende? Could we invite you to the stage to actually take over your panel, for you to start your panel? This is başladı. Mithat Rende is taking over this energy in the next decade panel discussion. Levent, İshak, Mustafa, Tırıs, Emre, Erdoğan, please make your way up to the stage, please. Your session starts now. Thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to apologize for a slight delay in our schedule. Please welcome to the stage His Royal Highness PrinceEl Hassan bin Talal, Prince of Jordan, to deliver a keynote address before we start our energy panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. With 90 million people, and if we include Turkey, 117 million people across the greater Levant, and may I use the expression Levant, which was actually chosen not by us, but by the European Union when they recognized the importance of a Mashriq agreement. If you recall Descartes' famous, of course he had many famous dicta, but one of them was if everything in this world is west, where does the sun rise? So I would like to say that the Mashriq, of course, is the center of our concerns, not only politically, but in every aspect of marginalization and vulnerability. I want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its representative here for having spoken of the incredible initiatives taken recently in terms of blue-green peace. But I also want to remind that in Montreux in 2011, we took a number of initiatives, including in that period, the creation of the synchrotron in Jordan, Sesame, which of course was an interaction of scientists from literally the whole region. So it seems to me that when there is a science platform, we can almost talk to each other. But in terms of the nuclear threat initiative, on which I still serve as an emeritus, I just want to say that our dilemma is always between mad, mutually assured destruction and mutually assured survival. I'm not a pessimist all the time. If you ask me, I would say I'm an optimist, and I'm not an optimist most of the time. But if you ask me, I'd say I'm a pessimist. But the fact is that from pandemic to climate change to intractable conflict, we have all come to the painful conclusion that the main forces of global transformation are still destructive. President Erdoğan emphasized the periphery of countries of the global system. And in 1994, as Minister Moussa may remember, at the Casablanca MENA conference, Middle East, North Africa, we attended to many topics relating to making the Mediterranean a nexus rather than a divide, and subsequently, sadly, most tragically, a sea of death. We suggested with the advent of solar energy, and in particular in the context of desert tech, a project which would take the sun across the North African littoral to Europe, and effectively what happened was I called with delegates from the MENA conference on the European Commission, and they said, first come, first serve. So I said, well, I'm not here in a petitive manner with my begging bowl, but I am here to ask for partnership. And this partnership would have provided utilities across North Africa for the vulnerable and the marginalized in Africa. And I applaud H.R.H's recent remarks at COP27 when he said he wished that the G20 would sooner or later become a G21 with the inclusion of the OAU, the Organization of African Union. Because after all, it is Africa that has suffered among the highest forms of suffering in terms of man against man, man against nature, and man-made disasters. I'm talking about principles for a new humanitarian initiative, which is actually not so new. We've been discussing it since the 1980s when I co-chaired a commission of that name with the then Secretary General. And today I'm not saying please revisit humanitarian law, but please apply it, is basically what I'm saying. And in this context, I want to say that the periphery countries of the global systems, according to President Erdoğan again, my words, not his, have borne the brunt of these global transformations and humanitarian crises that ensued. Coming from the Levant, a region geopolitically Mediterranean, we don't have a foot on the Mediterranean. We're not a Mediterranean littoral country. So they told me that I was geopolitically Mediterranean. I said, oh, wonderful. That means I'm like Portugal. They are not a Mediterranean littoral country, but they are Europeans. And I forgot myself, of course. So in the context of addressing the subject of the terra media, or the Mediterranean, we are not blameless, and nor are we helpless. Either we choose pluralism and recognition and respect for the other, or we choose the polarity of hatreds, and it seems that the latter is more current coinage and parlance than the former. As always, we have the power and the responsibility to reshape the world around us. And I say that in the context of the Arab-Muslim world, we can do so by emboldening and empowering people to become khulafa or custodians, stewards, vice-regents, or those who carry values such as amana, trust, adala, justice, shura, consultation, can be responsible for creating a fairer world, as President Erdoğan put it. But as I work in the field of interfaith conversations, I just want to say that I recently came across a spokesman of the evangelical American persuasion who said to us very clearly that Islamophobia is something we actually regard as an ever-present reality. Our people actually hate Muslims, and this is because they don't know Muslims. So this is maybe one of the sadness that we have, that we talk about these valuable assets that we have that compose custodianship of this earth, and yet we have not yet addressed the subject of how we can produce responsible facts, incontrovertible facts, to serve on the world community in which we live. Not my facts and your version and this version and the other, but incontrovertible facts which would transcend challenges, namely migration and climate change, which cannot be addressed by nation states alone. It is time to create a re-articulation of our global systems that are inclusive, that have cultural affinity, that we can use in addressing each other where possible to cease the phenomenon of firefighting of humanitarian crises. Sir Halford John Mackinder, one of the founding fathers of geopolitics and the founder of the London School of Economics, asserted that whoever commands the world island encompassing Afro-Eurasia commands the world. Tectonic plates separating Africa, Asia, and Europe run from Madagascar to the Taurus Mountains, and from East Africa up the Red Sea. This, according to Mackinder, is the heartland. We are responsible for reviving a new Levantine renaissance, Nahda, a transboundary Levant, a humanized Levant, a dignified Levant. At present, we are on the verge of an inescapable crisis, however, one that will impose unimaginable suffering on humanity. The destruction of our ecosphere, leading to ecocide, the destruction of our sociosphere, leading to sociocide. With this, I beg all of you not to accept cogitocide, the killing of our cogitosphere, our ability to think. That's why I assume why we're here today, to think together. In centuries past, this region's water basins fed and brought civilizations together. All these lands become more arid, and we will be left with only the monuments to times gone by. I remember before the Americans took action in Iraq, I was sitting in the office of the director of the British Museum, and the question from the Pentagon was, what is archaeologically significant about Mesopotamia? 4 days before military action was taken. The rest is immediate history, and I feel that it is our duty to heal the rift in those water basins before they become toxic black clouds, not only in South Asia, but in West Asia. And this is why taking the initiative of Blue Peace in Montreux was important, because one arm of it is in South Asia and Central Asia, so close to Turkey, and so influenced by and interactive with Turkey, and the other, of course, is in West Asia with what I just referred to as the new Levantine thinking. We have a duty to heal the Great Rift Valley that runs from the eastern Mediterranean southeast through the Dead Sea and Red Sea, and then south across East Africa, again the heartland. Eurasian African heartland. The plateaus, the tectonic plates have separated us. Can we at least attempt to heal the rift in the context of, for example, the Visegrad Four and the Danube Commission, which actually worked very well even in the height of the so-called Cold War? The Red Sea ecosphere, of course, is of great interest to us and to our immediate neighbors. We held a meeting of the littoral countries of the Red Sea only a few days before COP27, a precursor, if you will, a scientific precursor. It was not a political precursor, but we focused on implementing transboundary coordination and cooperation in the restoration and conservation of marine ecosystems in shared water basins and developing a Red Sea barometer. I know in Accra, Ghana, they have a barometer in West Africa, and I'm most impressed by the fact that both the MIT and the University of Strathclyde, among others, are working with them. Outsiders, as Moussa, Dr. Moussa referred to earlier, are all very well, however. If initiatives are taken by outsiders, they are supposed to spur us to develop regional cooperation. And only when we have an ECOSOC in the region, an Economic and Social Council that addresses the world, that addresses the United Peoples, not the United Nations necessarily, but the United Peoples, will we have the kind of NGO pressure that is necessary to bring about major change. So we can talk about sustaining blue and green economies in the region and decoupling economic growth from environmental degradation, but how can we realize it? It's worth noting, while COP27 takes its course, the proposal, once again, of turning G20 into 21, including the African Union, the G20 as it is leaves out 96% of Africa's population. That same population that will bear the brunt of the climate crisis. And I understand one of the major participants in COP has already announced that he is not attending. Moving forward requires us to come together, not only to deliberate, but more importantly, to listen to each other's interests and concerns, to fashion collective solutions, consequently advancing our regional creative commons. Global transformations have also revealed an untapped opportunity that is both regionally and culturally relevant: the institutional effective altruism of zakat, which already contributes significantly to humanitarian development, including the majority of the funding of the UNHCR's work, the High Commissioner for Refugees, and I applaud S.G. Gutierrez and the High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, for having brought this about. But I'm just wondering whether S.G. Gutierrez's reference to the Bretton Woods, IMF, and World Bank working with regional institutions with cultural affinity would not also take us a step further in terms of the ECOSOC, the preliminaries for a call for an ECOSOC of the region. We have ESQA. Southeast Asia has ESCAP. Southeast Asia is a numerous pluralist variety of regimes and of peoples, but differences between them have never stood in front of their intra-independence. And why can we not, in West Asia, develop the same institutional determination to depend on each other and remind the world that the Levant matters? after Baghdad, after Damascus, after Beirut, after what is happening in the territories, what next? Ask people from my country. So what next is either we emphasize development and stability through development, or if we are not able to rise above our divisions, it is doubtful that we will survive the next man versus man or man versus nature disaster. Do we really wish to wait for a tragedy to occur, as some of you have argued, possibly explicitly or implicitly? I think that is really too much of a luxury that none of us can afford. It's all very well to say, well, let it all go to hell in a bucket. But I want to say that a new global humanitarian initiative that places human dignity, as indeed Pope Francis has emphasized during his recent visit to Bahrain, and I look forward to having the privilege of visiting me again this year, that we can make the law work for everyone. I've served on the International Commission for the Legal Empowerment of the Poor, and I believe in empowerment and enablement, not in the patronage system. And I hope that the question which I'm posing to you all is, what is the best way to assess and prioritize the social and humanitarian impact of our decisions? How can we implement what we have called WIFI, water, energy, food, and environment, in a cluster of development initiatives? That is basically where I'd like to stop. And I just wonder, as one does standing at a podium like this in every conference, is it only going to be a workshop, or a talk shop, or are you all interested in developing global commons and regional realities of stabilizing our regions in the interest of survival of future generations? I am prepared to do my modest bit. I'm at your service and look forward to seeing you doing the same and expressing it in real time. Thank you very much.
Your Royal Highness, thank you very much. If I could please call to the stage Cengiz Özgencil and Erşad Türümüzlü to also thank the Prince of Jordan.
شكرا لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال لتشريفه، وشكرا لصداقته الدائمة للجمهورية التركية. صاحب السمو، تقديرا لمساهمتكم سنزرع اليوم شجرة باسمكم في إحدى المدن التركية العريقة، وهذه وثيقة الزراعة. شكرا. ويقدم الأخ جنجيز شعار قمة البسفور لسموكم الكريم. شكرا.
Thank you very much. Mithat, Rende, thank you for your patience, and to your panelists. The floor is all yours, sir. Just a small announcement before I do hand it over to Ambassador Rende. We will not be taking a coffee break. Your Royal Highness, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will not be taking a coffee break after this panel and moving straight on to the next panel after the energy panel, and that is with NATO. For now, the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to share the floor with His Royal Highness Prince of Hassan bin Talal. and to speak to so many prominent figures from all over the world. Let me start by expressing my most sincere thanks for the Bosphorus Summit for inviting me to chair such an important session, the future of energy, in a way. And also, I would like to express my most sincere thanks to the participants for having joined us this morning, and for the distinguished representative of the media and the interpreters in advance, because this is a session with a special jargon, and I hope that they will not have any difficulty in interpreting. Now, as I said, dear participants, we are faced with an energy crisis of global nature. And this morning and yesterday, speakers highlighted the importance of dealing with this global energy crisis. In fact, I would like to clarify one point, that this energy crisis initially started in Europe, and then it was exacerbated by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So now we have to deal with an energy crisis with all its adverse effects, but at the same time, we should keep in mind that we have also a major challenge, His Royal Highness alluded to, that is the energy crisis. And now at Sharm el-Sheikh, I think now they talk about more than crisis, it's a climate catastrophe that we have to deal with. In fact, let me also remind all participants that the United Nations Secretary General Guterres, in his opening remarks at Sharm el-Sheikh, he said that we are on a highway to hell altogether if we don't take the necessary measures on time. So what should we do? First of all, we have to deal with the energy, because at least the carbon dioxide emissions, 82% almost, of the carbon dioxide emissions are energy related, so we have to deal with the energy crisis first and foremost, and how to deal with it. First of all, yes, there were too many mistakes made by the European countries. Then we had the pandemic, the economic recession, followed by a huge economic activity, and with this huge economic activity, gas consumption worldwide increased by 4.6% in 2021. So it was a major challenge for all, because there were no investment enough, and then all of a sudden, then there was a huge demand for energy. So what shall we do? Of course, the best thing is to manage the energy transition. An energy transition to switch to green, to renewables and green energy, and also with the participation of the capacity to increase the capacity of nuclear power. So we need to switch to clean energy. In fact, Mr. Dr. Fatih Birol, the executive director of the International Energy Agency, recently he made an important statement on the occasion of the release of the Global Energy Outlook 2021. He said that the energy crisis is of truly of global nature, and then the 1.5 degrees international target cannot be achieved with today's measures, so we have to take more measures. And today, my prominent colleagues and the panelists, distinguished panelists, will cover this issue, and we will discuss the future, the 10 years, the next decade in the field of energy, and what can be done on a global level, in Europe, on a global level, and in Turkey in particular, to deal with this huge crisis, because otherwise we are going to face this energy catastrophe, the climate catastrophe, we will be having devastating effects. In fact, you might recall that already what has happened in Pakistan, which affected 33 million people of the Pakistani people, what happened with the wild forest fires and with unexpected droughts and extreme heats. So we need to deal with this matter, and we need to enhance the awareness of the people at large, that we need to do things together, and not only by states, but also by the private sector and non-governmental organizations and all other stakeholders. So now, having said this, I have the pleasure to introduce Mustafa Tırıs to make his contribution to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Royal Highness, His Excellencies, Chairman, speakers, and distinguished participants. The topic of this session is rather challenging. We are going to estimate in next decade what's going on in the energy field, mostly in the technology area. But on the other hand, it is very easy to talk about that because we have got early signals, and international efforts are driving some technological achievements, and also every country is doing a very good, putting very good effort on this. For a while ago, United Nations underlined the topic, saying that we cannot continue in this way, so it is not creating a sustainable future for us, so we should do some things all together for the climate change event. So we have got some factors about the availability of energy resources worldwide. In some areas, it is very hard to reach to energy, which required energy resources. But on the other hand, in some other areas, we are using energy in a very dirty way. So in 2015, as we all know that, countries came together and signed this Paris Agreement, underlining that we are going to do all together on this topic in order to decrease the temperature increase levels at the desired level. So, unfortunately, the contributing countries are different. For example, China, US, all these big countries are producing more and more carbon emissions, so the actions should start from these countries, actually, towards the developing world. And all countries, almost all countries, have set some targets to reach zero emission levels in order to minimize the greenhouse gas emissions and stop the climate change in the next decades. And every country is having different targets for the coming years. Some of them are saying that, okay, we are going to reach to this level in 2045, in some other countries in 2050, and so on. But what we all know that we are going to achieve these targets by using more renewable green energy resources and we should make a carbon-free energy future. So we should work on the electric grid. We should operate this electricity grid in a better way. So if we look at the source of the problem, it's coming mostly from the carbon dioxide emissions, and almost every sectors like transportation, electric power generation, industry, and commercial and residential areas are contributing more or less in similar quantities to the problem. So if we look at transportation sector, for example, so we are manufacturing some automotive parts and eventually cars. But during this production, we are contributing only 15% of the green gas emissions, but mostly we are contributing to the atmosphere during the operation, during fossil fuel burning. So 85% of the sources of emissions are coming from the use of gasoline and diesel. So therefore, we should concentrate on the problem by changing the source of power from fossil fuels to the electricity, but green electricity, of course. And in different countries, the contributions of the electricity car emissions are different because the source of electricity production will be different in different countries. For example, in France, we know that France is producing mostly electricity from nuclear energy, and therefore the carbon emissions of the electric usage is going to be less. But for example, in England or in the UK or in Turkey, we know that we are using some fossil fuels like natural gas or coal in order to produce electricity. So therefore, in the coming years, in the electricity mix, this coal and natural gas emissions will be effective in the electricity production. So in every country, and car manufacturers are setting targets in order to minimize their emissions by targeting, for example, the old targets were in 2025, the electricity portion of for the cars was 15%, but final target, so 100% of electric cars will be produced in 2035. But now new target is to reach to this level 100% in earlier stage for all type of cars or vehicles. So there are a lot of meetings and also announcements worldwide, and all companies in the car manufacturing sectors are announcing their own targets in order to reach all these targets. And all companies are not only setting targets for car manufacturing infrastructure, but also they are establishing some targets for charging stations and also other components which will facilitate the transformation of this car industry. And in Europe, for example, there are many attempts for the battery manufacturing infrastructure. They are putting a lot of efforts in order to produce more batteries because we need those batteries for air mobility, electric mobility. So therefore, they put a lot of efforts in order to produce batteries for next generation cars. Not only in Europe, of course, in the United States, many efforts are going on. And in Turkey also, we are trying to do some infrastructure. We are creating some infrastructure. We have got Aspilsan, Controlmatic, and Koç. They have already announced battery manufacturing infrastructure in Turkey, but we know that there are many more. They are thinking and they are working on establishing such infrastructure in Turkey. And also, finally, recently, the Turkish electric car manufacturing infrastructure will be supported with the battery manufacturing facility as well. But battery is not the only issue for the future electric car or transport infrastructure, but also we need a very well designed charging stations in order to use all these battery derived electric cars. So we need a lot of charging stations, and also we have started to establish such an infrastructure in Turkey. So hundreds of thousands of electric car charging stations will be established very soon in Turkey. We have started to see all of them in former gasoline stations, but now they are going to convert their infrastructure, these electric car charging stations. And if we look at the top 10 battery manufacturers, most of them are coming from China and Korea and Japan. If you add these three countries together, so more or less, more than 90% of the technology is going to come from those countries or those companies belonging to these countries. Let me go fastly. So to the final stage. So in the next decade, these tensions will continue, unfortunately, because of the limited resources. So all countries would like to reach to the existing resources, so this will result in conflicts in different zones of the world. And the supply chain and security of supply will be one of the major problems to solve altogether. So we should improve our infrastructure for better utilization of renewable energy resources. And for this sustainable future, the clean sources will be dominant. Of course, we are not going to get rid of all these carbon-derived fuels immediately, but eventually, until 2015, one by one, we are going to use carbon-derived fossil fuels in low quantities. So wind and solar will be more than half of the electricity production. Especially solar energy is will be the main source of electricity for many countries. Of course, we need storage facilities for that. For small systems, of course, we are going to use better infrastructure, but for bigger and utility scale, hydrogen will be dominant. So green hydrogen is going to be one of the key challenging technology. So as a result, renewable energy, wind, solar, hydro, geothermal energy will be dominant. Nuclear and natural gas, of course, we are going to use nuclear, natural gas, and clean coal technologies in the coming future. The energy storage is going to be very, very important. So we are going to use batteries, big scale of utility scale of batteries, and also hydrogen for utility scale, and also our cars will be electric drive cars, but this electricity will come from green sources. The energy management will be more and more important because in parallel with this digitalization, it is going to be very important, and also like blockchain applications and smart grid applications, we are going to manage energy more efficiently. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Mustafa Tırıs for his presentation. In fact, as he rightly said, Turkey has achieved a great deal in the field of renewables during the last decades. The private sector played a crucial role in investing on time, and we hope that to continue with this. Now, let me give the floor to Mr. Levent İshak. He is the representative of one of the global companies in the field of renewables. You have the floor, sir.
Dear Ambassador, High Honor Excellencies, the participants, I would like to thank to the Bosphorus Summit Organization Committee for inviting us to this very important event and to give us the floor to talk about what Vestas is talking and where Vestas is in the very important energy transition process. My name is Levent İshak. I am working for wind industry for more than 25 years in Turkey, and I am right now the head of Vestas Wind Systems, a Danish company. Just for the company, a brief information for the ones who doesn't know. Vestas is the world's largest wind turbine manufacturer. We have more than 160 gigawatt installed wind turbines globally. We are working in this wind sector for more than 45 years, and the trigger point was actually the oil crisis back in the end of 1970s. So that's a coincidence that we are right now accelerating our interest on the renewables, which already started and triggered with another oil crisis back in 1970s. It's a very important event for us, and the highest honor as represented, and he talked. We would like to see this kind of events, not just a workshop, definitely, but should be a wake-up call, because we all know from the reports we are now very smart enough to calculate where we are heading through. The climate crisis, as very well said by the ambassador, is not a climate crisis, it's a climate catastrophe, unfortunately. And we all know that, as an engineer, I am a mechanical engineer, if we are not proactive, the bill is very much higher than being retroactive. Unfortunately, this is something that the civilization is always facing, but we are not smart enough to take lessons from this and hope that this kind of events will trigger that point. For the company, Vestas has been selected this year from Corporate Knights, an organization, the most sustainable company in the world, which has been selected more than $1 billion cash generating companies worldwide which are publicly listed, and it has been the first among the applied 6,914 companies. So we are very proud of that. This shows that our sustainable agenda, where we are staying today and what we are targeting for the future, is appreciated, and this is also giving us a very big load to go further in the next decades. Why we are talking about sustainability and the climate crisis is very obvious, so I don't have to repeat. That was a very good presentation from Mustafa Bey, actually. So this is not something to have, this is just must to have. So this is about civilization, this is about Earth, this is about the future of our childs, of the humanitarian life. So we have to do it. We are talking about the coming 10 years, which is fine, but we should also be really aware of the processes going forward. The energy transition has a couple of legs. One is the most important one where we are staying through, which is the energy generation through renewables, zero waste. The second one is how to adapt it into the grid. And the most important part, as Mustafa Bey said in the presentation, the cars that are consuming fuels, the industry that are consuming fuels, have to transfer this to another transition, another level. For Vestas, we have a very tough plan for carbon neutrality, and our target for 2030 is to be carbon neutral without carbon offset. So that's a very ambitious target, and we have very clear agenda in our hands to move forward to get this important result. Also, we are targeting to reach zero waste turbine in the value chain through the end of the life, latest in 2040, which is way less than most of the targeted net zero targets of the companies in 2050s and 2060s, actually. So what is important for us is to highlight, we have the technology, we have the capacity, actually, and we also have very clear plans how to increase our supply chain and how to lead this transition. But also there is a very important role of this part. This movement is the permitting processes on moving to the renewable energies. Right now in Europe, in many countries, when you say let's install a wind farm, it takes at least 8 years from today. So what we have to do is to take immediate actions from permitting point of view to reach this target as soon as possible. So we have to see some progress. Unfortunately, there are too many events worldwide which we are talking about the importance, but we are not in the level of seeing that we are proceeding in the correct direction. And from the international agency, Energy Agency, what Fatih Birol, Executive Director, said that even we keep, all the countries keep their promises for the net zero targets, we are not going to be able to reach 1.5% temperature increase globally. So what we have to do is actually to do it today and start from doing it today. And the most important part is the grid and the investments on the grid, which is crucial to implement more green power into the grid, so that's very crucial. In Turkey, we installed more than 2,000 megawatts. Our target back in 2011, 2012 was to reach 20,000 megawatts wind installed, but unfortunately, we have not been able to reach that level. So we are around right now in 11,600 megawatt. We can do it. We have the technology. We have the manpower, which is much more important for the sustainability. But we have to speed up, actually, from permitting and investment point of view. I think that I can finish here just to save time. Okay. Thank you very much for your time and for your interest.
Thank you very much for your valuable contribution, Levent Bey. It's my intention to also give the floor to our friend Emre Erdoğan, and then we will have, yes please, you may have the floor, and then we will have a period of QA session if the audience would like to put questions to the panelists, to all of us. You have the floor, Emre Bey.
Teşekkürler Sayın Bakanlar, değerli katılımcılar. Bugün burada aranızda olmak benim için büyük bir onur ve gurur vesilesi. Tabii bu kadar değerli katılımcı ve konuşmacılardan sonra önümüzdeki 10 yılda değinilmedik neler var konuşmak çok kolay olmayacak. Ama yine çok da sevmediğimiz belki tablodan başlamak gerekecek. Dünya Ekonomik Forumu'nun bu yıl başında açıkladığı dünyanın önümüzdeki 10 yılda yaşayacağı en büyük riskler raporuna baktığımız zaman maalesef karşılaşması muhtemel en önemli 3 riskin yine iklim değişikliği ile ilgili olduğunu görüyoruz. Tabii iklim değişikliği deyince ilk etapta karşımıza çıkan konu sera gazı ve karbon emisyonları konusu. Enerji sektörü de şu an gördüğümüz şekliyle yaklaşık olarak dünya emisyonlarının %70-75'inin kaynağı olduğu için sürdürülebilirlik ve de daha yaşanılabilir bir dünya için atılacak her türlü adım, alınacak her türlü önlem gerçekten enerji sektörünü ve nasıl elektrik ve enerji ürettiğimizi yakından ilgilendirmekte. Bunun için de önümüzdeki 10 yılda enerji sektörünü belirleyecek, bu yöndeki enerji sektöründeki gelişmeleri belirleyecek en önemli konu tabii ki karbonsuzlaşma ve sürdürülebilirlik başlıkları olacak. Bu noktaya baktığımız zaman elektrifikasyon vazgeçilmez bir parçası artık modern dünyanın ve burada hızlıca ilerlemeler kaydetmeye devam edeceğiz. Bunu yaparken en büyük ümidimiz ve herkesin hedefi tabii ki bu elektrik üretimindeki artışın, enerji üretimindeki artışın tamamıyla yenilenebilir kaynaklardan geliyor olması ve bütün hedefler ve yatırımlar bu doğrultuda. Umarım önümüzdeki yıllarda da bunun gerçekleştiğini görürüz. Buna yenilenebilir enerjideki artışa geçişte tabii ki karbon emisyonlarının azaltılmasına yönelik bir takım aksiyonların da alınması gerekiyor. Bunlar teşvikler olduğu kadar bir takım önleyici veya vergilendirme mekanizmaları da olacaktır. Bunun için de emisyon ticaret sisteminin de önümüzdeki 10 yılda sıkça konuşulan ve duyulan konulardan bir tanesi haline gelecek. Bu özellikle endüstrilerin hangi kaynaklardan enerji tükettiği anlamında önem kazanacak. Ve yenilenebilir dediğimiz zaman hepimizin bildiği gibi yenilenebilir enerji üretimi son derece kesintili bir elektrik üretimi. Burada arz güvenliğinin sağlanabilmesi için tabii ki depolama sistemleri önemli bir başlık haline geliyor ve bu noktadaki gelişmeler aslında bir noktada da yenilenebilir kaynaklardan elektrik üretiminin ne kadar artacağı noktasında limitler bir pozisyon alıyor. Genel olarak baktığımız zaman hem ülkemizde hem dünyada önümüzdeki 10 yılda ve sonrasında elektrik üretiminin daha çok yenilenebilir kaynaklardan olacağını görmekteyiz. Bu birçok tahminde de karşımıza çıkıyor. Sevindirecek kısım önümüzdeki 10 yılda bütün elektrik üretiminin yarısı ve hatta belki daha fazlasının yenilenebilir kaynaklardan elde edilecek olması. Bu trend hepimizin hoşuna gidiyor fakat bunun karşılığında tabii kesintili üretimin nasıl çözüleceği söz konusu. Burada ilk karşımıza çıkan depolama sistemleri, batarya sistemleri. Burada Mustafa Bey zaten derinlemesine anlattığı için tekrar batarya tarafına girmeyeceğim ama özellikle son dönemde popüler olan diğer bir konu başlığı olan yeşil hidrojene belki birazcık değinmek gerekecek. Yeşil hidrojen aslında hidrojen uzun süredir hem endüstrinin hem enerji sektörünün kullanımında fakat son dönemde bu kadar popüler olması tabii ki sürdürülebilir başlığının tekrar gündeme gelmesi ve yeşil hidrojenin de tabiri caizse bir İsviçre çakısı gibi birçok konuda bir çözüm alternatifi olarak karşımıza çıkıyor olması. Şu anki tahminler doğrultusunda 2050'li yıllarda aslında yeşil hidrojen 80 gigaton gibi çok büyük bir karbon emisyonunun ortadan kaldırılması için bir alternatif oluşturabiliyor. 80 gigatonda o dönem için yıllık karbon emisyonlarımızın neredeyse %20'si gibi bir miktarın karşılığı. Tabii buradaki en büyük konu yeşil hidrojenin gelişimi için bir takım büyüklüklere erişmesi lazım. Bu noktada yeni yatırımlar gerekiyor. Hem gerek üretim noktasında hem de kullanım noktasında finansmanı bulması gerekmekte. Bu açıdan baktığımız zaman 2030'lu yıllara kadar şu an halihazırda devam edilen, yatırımı kararı alınmış veya planlama aşamasında bulunan yeşil hidrojen projeleri için 240 milyar dolarlık bir bütçe ayrıldığı görünmekte. Bunun çok büyük bir kısmı genelde Avrupa Birliği sınırları içerisinde. Yani oradaki kaynaklar dünyanın diğer taraflarının daha önüne geçmiş durumda ama son dönemde Avrupa Birliği'nin yine Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin de yeşil hidrojen noktasında ilave kaynaklara ayırması, yeşil hidrojenin hayatımıza belki daha da erken dönemde gireceği noktasında hepimizi ümitlendiren bir başlık olarak karşımıza çıkmakta. Bunun yanı sıra alternatif teknolojiler noktasında ne var dediğimiz zaman tabii ki yenilenebilir kaynaklardan elektrik üretiminin arttığı noktada baz yük ihtiyacımızın veya yenilenebilir kaynaklardan elektrik üretemediğimiz noktalarda gerekli ihtiyacın karşılayacağı teknolojiler ön planda. Şu an görmüş olduğumuz teknolojiler belki şu an ticarileşmiş durumda değil ama önümüzdeki 10 yıl içerisinde gerekli yatırımlar ve bu noktada kaynak ayrılması noktasında yenilenebilir kaynakları destekleyecek ve karbon emisyonlarımızı azaltacak, sürdürülebilir bir büyümeyi sağlayacak teknolojiler olarak karşımıza çıkmakta. Bildiğiniz gibi bu yıl içerisinde Avrupa Birliği sürdürülebilir işler taksonomisine nükleer enerjiyi de dahil etti. Her ne kadar nükleer enerji dediğimiz noktada birazcık böyle bir durup düşünsek gerçekten güvenli mi, çevresel açıdan neleri içeriyor, ne gibi riskler var desek de özellikle SMR teknolojisiyle bütün bu üretimin daha kontrol edilebilir, kalite anlamının da daha kontrol edilen fabrikalarda yapılabilmesi ve mobilitesi anlamında enteresan çözümler sunacağı öne çıkmakta. Yine uzun süreden beri dünyanın üzerinde çalıştığı füzyon teknolojisinin gelişi bu noktada bizim için farklı noktaları açabilir. Bir de uzun dönemden beri yine kullandığımız jeotermal enerjide şu an belirli bir derinliğe kadar gidebiliyoruz. Yeni gelecek daha derin sondajları açabilecek, yani burada daha derinden kastımız 3 ile 7 kilometre ve belki daha ötesindeki teknolojilerin hayata gelmesi de yine dünyanın belki de bu baz yük ihtiyacının karşılanmasında daha çevreci çözümler olarak karşımıza çıkabilecek. Tabii bütün bunları şu an COP27 kapsamında da konuşulan finansmanı bulabilecek miyiz? Şu anki konjonktürde faiz oranlarının artması bu tip özellikle Ar-Ge ve deneyimsel projelere ne kadar ve ne miktarda finansman bulabileceğimiz sorusunu da ortaya çıkartıyor. Umarım bu noktadaki yeni teknolojiler, özellikle sürdürülebilir taraftaki teknolojilere ayrılacak kaynakların artmasıyla bir sonraki buluşmalarda ve önümüzdeki yıllarda sürdürülebilirlik adına herkesin daha gururla söyleyebileceği adımları atmış olarak buralarda toplanırız. Yoksa zaten daha öncesinden de bahsedildiği gibi şu anki gidişat hani bizden sonraki nesiller karşısında çok da gururla anlatabileceğimiz, zamanında elimizde imkan ve yetki varken şunları da yaptık diyebileceğimiz durumda değil diyorum. Ben burada bu fırsatı da verdiğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum size.
Teşekkür ederim. Teşekkür ederim Emre Bey. His Excellency Minister Amr Moussa, in his valuable contribution to the conference, he stated he made very salient points. One of which was that in order to we need not harm people, we need to help people, and the international order should do that, or should try to do that, because of the fact that we have millions of people in developing countries in full poverty, and we need to lift them out of poverty. And this is why we need to deal with the food crisis. And if we are to deal properly with the food crisis, we need to achieve a great deal in the field of energy. So the energy crisis has to be dealt with. Without energy, well, agriculture is not possible. And then we should keep in mind also that we have to deal with the African countries because at Sharm el-Sheikh, apparently their representatives highlighted the fact that they have to burn more coal in order to survive. So this is why the international community has to act together, dear friends and participants, that there should be a kind of a global awareness that these issues have to be dealt with all together. Food crisis, the energy crisis, and the climate catastrophe. This is what we should say, the catastrophe of climate, that they will hit all of us, the rich, the poor, and everybody, all humankind. So this is why the future of energy is quite important, and the solution is green energy, clean energy, phasing out coal, trying to decarbonize our economies, and we need of course capital. The capital has to come from the developed countries, and there should be a kind of collective efforts and awareness to deal with energy issues. Now, I don't know whether we have a few minutes for questions. Thank you. You have been very generous with us.
You've been very good on time management, so it's my pleasure to actually extend about 5-6 minutes for questions.
Thank you. Let me take a few questions. Here, I see.
We have one in the front.
Yeah.
Let me give you my microphone just in terms of saving time.
Merhaba. Türkçe sormamda bir mahsur var mıydı? Şu an geliyor mu sesim? Merhaba, hoş geldiniz öncelikle. Ben de BES transformatör firmasında çalışıyorum. Aslında ben de enerji sektöründeyim bir nevi. Hani bu bağlamda bu paneli gerçekten yakından takip edip ilgilenmiş oldum böylece. Şu anda aslında bizim baktığımızda yenilenebilir ve temiz enerji üretiminde dünyada yükselen bir trend var. Bu zaten herkesin malumu. Benim sorum şu an daha çok bu özellikle taşıtlardaki karbondioksit emisyonunun daha aza indirilmesi konusunda hani global firmaların olmak üzere büyük bir çalışma ve efor içinde herkes. Hani buradaki amacımız zaten yeşil enerji ve yeşil ekonominin düzeltilmesi yönünde. Hani bu anlamda da taşıtlardaki karbondioksit emisyonunun daha aza indirilmesi, hatta işte 10-15 yıllık bir vade içinde sıfırlanma hedefinin güdülmesi konusunda benim de bir iki tane sorum olacak. Burada Mustafa Bey belki biraz daha cevap verecek durumda olabilir. Şimdi benim burada merak ettiğim...
Soruya yönelebilir misiniz? Zamanımız çok kısıtlı. Sorunuzu sorun.
Direkt giriyorum soruya. Şimdi burada şarj istasyonlarının artırıldığından bahsediliyor. Türkiye genelinde her geçen yıl şarj istasyonları artıyor. Ama benim burada bilmek istediğim, yani bu araçları şarj istasyonuna götürdüğünüzde oradaki bir şarj süresi oluyor sonuçta. Bunun vadesi oluyor. Hani bunları çok daha kısa sürede ve hemen bitirmek için bununla ilgili bir çalışma ayrıca yürütülüyor mu? Normalde bunun belli bir süresi var sonuçta. Bu anlamda bir çalışma var mı?
Teşekkür ederim.
Ben bunu merak ediyorum.
Arkadaşlara söyledim. Kısaca yanıt vermek isteyen arkadaşımız var mı? Buyurun.
Enerjisa da bununla ilgili bir H.R.H diye bir firma kurdu. Ben kısaca söyleyeyim. Yani hızlı şarj teknolojileri gelişiyor. Bununla ilgili sayının da artmasıyla beraber çok kısalacaktır bu süre. Ama bir geçiş süreci mutlaka yaşayacağız. Onu hep birlikte yaşayacağız. Yani teknolojinin buna adaptasyonu artı yaygınlaşmasıyla bu süreci götüreceğiz. Belki Emre Bey de H.R.H çünkü ülkedeki en önemli altyapı imkanlarına sahip olan firmaların başında geliyor. Dolayısıyla belki Emre Bey bir iki cümle söyleyebilir onu.
Tabii burada Mustafa Bey'in söylediği gibi önemli olan konu şarj istasyonlarının arttırılması noktasında, şarjların hızlandırılması noktasında da teknolojik olarak çalışmalar devam ediyor. Fakat ilk etapta belki hayatımıza dokunacak konu şarj istasyonlarının sayısının arttırılması, ama yakın dönemde daha hızlı şarj imkanları da gelecek. Teknolojinin bunu desteklemesiyle şu an endişelendiğimiz şarj süresi de umarım önümüzden bir engel olarak kalkacak.
Teşekkür ederim. Başka soru var mı acaba? Any other
Actually,
question?
if I could sort of step in, I actually have a question.
Please go ahead.
Sure. If I could give you the microphone.
I'm an expert. I want to learn from the experts. All what we're doing about is trying to find alternatives to oil and gas. Why don't we address it the other way around by using the technology to make oil and gas not destructive, to make them useful, and that is through technology, through artificial intelligence and other. There is no serious effort in any country that I know of which is trying to solve the problem of transforming these basic products to become non-destructive.
Let me take this. Thank you very much for your contribution. It's true that one of the means to switch to a decarbonized world is also to benefit from the new technologies, and for example, the blue hydrogen technology is quite forthcoming. It's promising. And also the capture and storage technology, which is at this point in time, it's maybe expensive or it's not affordable. But you're absolutely right that while trying to decarbonize, also we should benefit. We should make use of the new technologies to use also fossil fuels, but not as they stand today. That you can use natural gas for blue hydrogen, and maybe in the future, who knows? Like the fusion technology is also very promising. Thank you very much for your contribution, sir.
Ambassador Rende, if I could actually ask a question. In COP26, what we saw was a watered-down adoption of the phasing out of coal. It was sort of we're going to phase out coal over time. What we've seen because of this conflict in Ukraine is a desire to reduce reliance on Russian hydrocarbon energies. Because of that, we're seeing a lot of European countries put back their coal stations. Do you feel that geopolitical risks actually risks the agenda being hijacked?
Very well said. Indeed. You rightly said that the geopolitical risks, in fact, led to burning more coal in Europe and beyond. And unfortunately, this is why COP26 was. We were expecting more than COP26, but they decided to phase down rather instead of phasing out coal. They decided to phase down, and India, China, even the United States, all coal-burning countries, coal-rich countries, they thought that at this point that there should be only a phasing down of coal. Mm-hmm. This was not a strong commitment on the part of the international community. But now with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, or with the Ukrainian war in general, and the unaffordable energy prices, which led to a recession in Europe, high inflation, high food prices, recession, and more, then it seems that in the absence of natural gas, enough natural gas, maybe even during the next winter, then they will have to burn more coal because our European friends also made mistakes. Let's face it, that they decided to decommission nuclear power stations maybe earlier than expected. President Macron decided to also to put half of the running nuclear power stations under maintenance. He decided to stop the operation of half of the capacity, nuclear capacity, in order to upgrade and maintain. But then they changed their mind, and now they will have to run all of them. And then they will have to build, with the new technology, 6 more nuclear power stations. So the world is, unfortunately, with the geopolitical risks, the world has to wait for a while, and we're not internationally, at international level, we're not wholeheartedly combating climate change and climate crisis.
And that's the sense of urgency that's being talked about at COP27 this year in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yes.
Ambassador Mithat Rende. Sure.
I believe, I learned to believe that everything you can imagine is a reality awaiting to be implemented. In my mind does not accept the fact that we cannot go around. For example, when you say cars will be run by electricity, but to produce electricity you need gas or oil. And so you're only evading the issue instead of being creative. I would like to suggest that top experts in the world like you should concentrate on finding a solution to making these emissions friendly. And that is possible. I am not an expert, but my mind tells me that it is possible to address the basic issue, as you have done in so many creative ways, address the issue of how to make emissions friendly by technology. I think this is the solution to the world because, okay, now we are in what we call hybrid cars. Next, we will have electricity cars, but we're still back to electricity. We need it. How do you produce it?
Okay, just a few sentences. The problem with the oil and gas, they are having full of carbon. So if you burn them, you are producing carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is the main source of the greenhouse gas emissions, and it is creating climate change. So we know all the effects worldwide. So you cannot take this carbon out of these fuels. So that's very unrealistic because you are producing energy by burning this carbon. So you are producing carbon dioxide emissions at the end of the process. So what the technical experts are trying to make carbon capture and storage technologies to develop. But right now, it is not so feasible, it is not so practicable and affordable as well. So therefore, but look at, for example, in Africa. You should transfer all this, how you are going to transfer this natural gas. So you should make gas storage infrastructure in all these countries and so on. But they have got plenty of solar energy. And solar electricity is very cheap. And this solar electricity is not producing any carbon as well. So by applying solar electricity infrastructure there, you can produce electricity with less than 3 cents per kilowatt hour. 3 US cents, less than this amount of at the moment. But if you burn gasoline or diesel, in order to produce electricity in Africa, you should spend 50 US cents. So huge difference in between. So in every aspect, not only climate change, but also in economical terms, a new era is coming. In this new era, we are not going to see a lot of coal, unfortunately, or fortunately. But these short-term decisions which Europe made in order to use more coal, it is only a short-term solution. It is not going to create any solution in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we are running out of time.
Yes.
I'm most thankful to our panelists for their valuable contributions and to you all for being patient with us. It has been a very interesting exchange and also a contribution to the Bosphorus Summit. Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions?
No, thank you very much. Emre, Levent, Mustafa, thank you very much. Ambassador Rende, thank you very much. You can please feel free to continue this discussion out on in the foyer or during lunch. Thank you very much. Let's move on straight on to our next panel discussion. We're going to be talking about the strategic partnership between Türkiye and NATO. May I please invite to the stage retired Brigadier General Taner Sığıroğlu, as well as the panelists, Lady Olga Maitland, Peter van Braak, and Tajan Ilem, and Patrick Mukherjee, Major General retired,